The Ghostface mask has been immortalized as a beloved horror icon, with many fans even dedicating paychecks to their collection. But over 25 years since it was first showcased in Scream, the mask that we know and love today can be best compared to Oreos. Aside from the same color scheme, both are wildly successful knockoffs. And at the end of it all, the true creator of the mask has never gotten proper compensation or credit for his design being used. Before we get started, a big shout out to this Fangoria article and this Twitter thread that inspired this video, as I didn't know much of this stuff prior to reading them. Anyway, the year was 1990, and here in LA was Loren Gitthens, a special effects makeup artist that worked at Tony Gardner's Alterian Studios. Now, you might not recognize the studio name, but you have definitely seen their work, as they're still very busy to this day. But going back to 1990, when it was time for the company Halloween party, Loren had a light bulb idea that would pave the way for everything that we associate this mask with. He had to make a costume, so he decided to take inspiration from his 1985 Screamer Longjaw. From that, Loren designed and sculpted a mask that was put on a bedsheet, and thus we got the first ever version of a wearable Ghostface. A few months later, when business was down, the studio decided to lean into the Halloween mask market. After coming up with 6 different masks, they put out an ad for them in Fangoria magazine, which was met with good reception. As a result, Tony Gardner started a second business to sell them under, the Alterian Ghost Factory. When coming up with more ideas, Loren was the one to suggest selling his mask design, but for a DIY bedsheet Halloween costume, the Ghost Maker. He was passionate about this project, so much so that the studio ended up hiring his childhood friend, Bill Bowes, to create the product art for it. When everything was ready, Loren and his artist co-worker, Jim Usterman, drove to the annual Halloween trade show held in my neck of the woods, Chicago. This was the place to be for novelty companies that wanted to show off their products to retailers, to drum up new business and secure more funding. That's the perfect place for the Alterian Ghost Factory to reveal and sell their Ghostmaker kits. Loren and Jim were so committed to the factory theme that they dressed in white lab coats and took orders on clipboards. Unfortunately, the company was newer and smaller compared to all the others there, so they ended up not really selling many masks. But one of the companies that was there was very interested in what they had to offer. Funworld, another company that specializes in commercial masks, was set to begin a new line of Halloween products. A designer by the name of Bridget Slyerton-Liddon was tasked with the cornerstone of the new project. The funny thing about that is, she wasn't asked to make original designs. I was given a picture of something similar to what the finished mask would eventually look like. I was asked if I thought these could be made as masks and to do some drawings with a similar look and feel. So I did a bunch of sketches of different faces with that same white melty face with simplistic black facial feature shapes. Alan Geller, Stanley Geller, remember those names for later, and one of the other product managers at the time decided which ones they liked and moved forward with those. Once those designs were finalized and made, they were put on shelves in 1992 as part of Funworld's Fantastic Faces collection. Now, I may have terrible eyesight that temporarily blinds anybody that tries on my glasses, but even with my glasses off, I could still see the similarities between Funworld's mask and Alterian's trade show ones. While the silly, goofy, and happy mask became obscure, it was the weeping ghost that would end up surviving the test of time. This original first generation mask is a collector's dream and thus comes with a hefty price tag. All of that success is based on an imitation, and it wouldn't be the first time. Funworld had previously taken other mask ideas to use as their own, such as the Green Witch design from a Dawn Post collection. A year after Funworld started selling the Weeping Ghost, Loren left his line of work behind. I was tired of trying to sell masks and work in the makeup effects business, and I gave it all up and moved to Santa Cruz to start a new life with my wife. Then, a year or two after he moved away, Loren saw the Funworld mask in a drugstore display. He of course recognized it as his design right away, but didn't really think much of it. I was a bit amused, but didn't pursue looking into it any further, as I had left that part of my life behind and was on to a new one. Then, in 1995, Wes Craven was set to begin making his next horror film, Scream. But they still didn't have everything together before shooting. The killer was missing a mask. As the script put it, a ghostly white right mask was needed. It had to be perfect. That's when, on a location scout, executive producer Marianne Madalena found a Funworld Weeping Ghost mask in a bedroom. She immediately took it and ran downstairs to show Wes Craven and some others. I said, "Oh my god, you guys, look at this mask. How about this?" They all said no, and Marianne was gutted. Wes Craven was very set on having an original mask. Weeks later, they still haven't found the look they wanted. So Marianne brought the idea back to Wes Craven, and this time around, he was more open to it. However, they couldn't wait for the rights to be finalized as they needed to start shooting soon. As a result, K&B Effects Group made a similar looking mask to use. It was for the earliest shot scenes in the film, including scenes with Drew Barrymore and Henry Winkler. Once the rights were finalized, they continued filming with the new versions and even reshot some scenes for it. The movie ended up being a blockbuster hit, grossing $173 million on a $14.5 million budget. The Weeping Ghost mask exploded in popularity. Obviously, Funworld jumped on this and marketed the mask as the one seen in Scream, and also started selling it with robes to fit the movie appearance. When Tony Gardner saw this, he was genuinely flattered that they had used our mask design. I really enjoyed the movie and thought it was a great compliment that Whaler was up there on the big screen and in such a great film. I was a bit naive at the time and assumed that since it had been years since we created the mask, there would be no way to fight for it. I also assumed that the movie was a one-time deal and that the ship had already sailed. Easter Unlimited, Funworld's main company, trademarked the Ghostface name. That was coined by licensing director R.J. Torbert. Another name we'll have to remember for later. But legally, this was Funworld's, and it still is. Decades later, the brand has become a Halloween juggernaut and has made hundreds of millions of dollars, both from the mask itself and from movie rights and royalties. It has a firm grip on not just the horror scene, but in our general culture. It's been parodied over and over again and brought back a newfound relevance with the recent modern movies. And it does well even without the Scream franchise attached to it. Ghostface is a very prominent figure in the hit game Dead by Daylight. And by the way, if you ever want to stop by and chat with me while I play this, I stream on Twitch every Monday and Friday at 7 p.m. Central, so it'd be really cool if you followed. The link to that is down below. Thanks, I appreciate it. The game's developers and Funworld have even produced original masks together to sell both in-game and in real life. And through all of that money that's been brought into Funworld's pockets, Loren hasn't seen a single cent of it. To summarize, here's a quote from Chet Zar, another Alterian Ghost Factory employee. I recently read an article in Fango on a company called Funworld that said they designed the mask used in the Scream movies. Well, this is simply not true. The mask was originally created by Loren Gitthens at a company called the Alterian Ghost Factory. A year later, Funworld put out a knockoff of one of the kits' masks. But being a small company, we didn't have the funds to take legal action. So, what does Loren have to say about all of this? I don't at all fault the makers of Scream. For all they knew, it was a mask designed and owned by Funworld. But what bothers me is that someone else is taking credit for my original design. I have been carrying this story with me for more than 20 years, and now I'm sharing it with you. Funworld denies all of this, with them even claiming on their website that the mask was created by the now current company president, Alan Geller. But wait, that doesn't make sense. Didn't I just say a few minutes ago that their designer, Bridget Slyerton-Lydon, drew up the concept for it? The last time that Bridget's name was officially acknowledged alongside Funworld was in January of 2000, in a joint interview for the 189th Fangoria issue with her and then Funworld CEO Stanley Geller. In between quotes from both of them, the magazine notes that she designed the mask before the Scream movie was developed. From then on, her involvement has been largely swept under the rug. As of today, Stanley Geller's son, Alan Geller, takes full credit as the sole creator of the Ghostface design. And remember R.J. Torbert, the licensing director I mentioned earlier that created the Ghostface name? He also denies that Loren's early designs influenced their now famous mask. Torbert also blocks people that brings this up to him, even going as far as threatening legal action. This sort of behavior from members of the company is a bit ironic considering that they themselves cracked down down on other selling products that resembled their catalog, like they told Workbench Designs, an independent studio that made and sold replicas of the K&B designed Screaming Ghost mask. That is really interesting because Funworld sells masks that are based off of Workbenches, such as the Silent Screamer. I'd also like to mention here a copyright loophole myth, that if 30% of a product is changed, then it can be sold no problem. I'm not a lawyer, but actual lawyers have confirmed that this is just a myth. It's not actually a real legal thing, and it's definitely not something that would be protected. Now, artists getting screwed over like this is nothing new. In fact, remember the Twitter thread that I mentioned at the beginning of the video? The one that helped inspire this whole entire thing? That was actually in response to a mask of the character Siren Head being sold in a store. Siren Head, along with Cartoon Cat, are both creations of Trevor Henderson, and yet here they are being sold in a retail store with none of those profits going back to him. Think of how many times you've seen a Ghostface mask in a store. Especially around Halloween, they have walls dedicated just for that. Just like Trevor, none of that is going back to Loren. With that being said, there is a difference between being inspired versus stealing. All art is influenced by something else. Ghostface's earliest mask designs have a resemblance to Everett Munch's famous 1893 painting, The Scream. And from there, it's speculated that the pose was inspired by a Peruvian mummy that Munch could have seen at an exposition in Paris. Additional influences for the mask have also been stated to be the ghost from a Betty Boop special and the face from Pink Floyd's The Wall. And the threads of influence become more tangled and complicated when you take into consideration that Disney's original Haunted Mansion attraction, which was developed in the 50s and 60s, decades before this whole entire Ghostface mask saga, had a pair of decapitated skull-like heads that would pop up to scream and scare guests. As far as I'm aware, there's no solid link between these and the masks that we know today. Remember, this was before the information age of the internet. People couldn't just look this kind of stuff up, especially schematic designs like this one. So although there is a chance that someone saw this, either Loren or someone from Funworld, the chances of that are not high. So the next likely thing would be them seeing it at the attraction itself. And this is just a really quick face that jumps up. It was also a lot harder to carry around cameras back in the day, and it definitely wouldn't work well in a low-lit environment like this. No one from either side has ever mentioned Disney's design, so there's no way of knowing if they were influenced by it. So I'm willing to give all parties involved the benefit of the doubt on that one, as it seems way more likely that Funworld saw Loren's designs and then took them from the trade show. So if tracing back inspiration can be complicated and all art is derived from other sources, why does this matter? Why should we care about Funworld profiting off of Loren's designs? So what if a company takes an idea if they could make it better, if they could sell it better? Aside from sort of, you know, being theft, it's dangerous to let this kind of stuff go unchecked because it sets a precedent. If one company does it and gets away with it, that only encourages another to do the same thing, and then another and another. Artists already have enough to deal with when it comes to worrying about their art being taken and used without their consent. And I also think it's a really resounding notion when the original artists involved don't even ask for a revenue share, even if they have a pretty strong case for it. In this specific situation, they just want credit. Tony Gardner called the Alterian Ghost Factory a labor of love, as it was self-financed by him and his wife. Them and all of their employees were passionate about what they did. They were dedicated to expressing their love for Halloween and all things spooky. That's exactly what connects all of us here. That's what made you click on this video. You yourself might even have Ghostface mask and not know about any of this stuff, but even after learning everything here, you still love them and the character, right? As Tony Gardner put it, the fact that our designs were so well liked made the experience all the more enjoyable. And if the artists at Alterian that were involved could get acknowledgement for their creativity and all the time and hard work that went into launching our business, that would be the most rewarding aspect of all, especially with a design that's become so iconic at this point. I didn't make this to start a witch hunt or to boycott Funworld or anything like that. I made this because I believe it's important that people understand the full truth of what they like, no matter how tumultuous it may be. So if Funworld won't give proper credit to Loren, then at least we could. Thanks for watching.
You figure that if somebody's gonna go out and spend the money to get a mask and go to a party, they want to be shocking. You know, they want people to stare at them and you know, and be blown away. So that's kind of the effect that we try to get out of these things.